So hello everyone, my name is Kaku and welcome to a small drawing tutorial video, and today I'd like to just touch a little bit on what is a sketch really, because when people think of sketching they sometimes go like this. Yeah, here's the character's head, and then there are the eyes. They have like this big anime eyes because those are trendy, and it's looking this way. It has that face that is doing this, and have the nose. It's like and you draw in the chin, and then you have like this wacky hair that just goes all over the place, and then you have the neck. You draw this. You put in those huge boobs that people love to draw this kind of character. Yeah, and so you start to draw everything like this, but really this is just making it hard for yourself. Like the thing is that drawing involves a lot of things, and with drawing you can't just, if you're doing like just a sloppier version of your drawing at first and then drawing over it, it's like you're trying to get everything at once. Say, I wrote down a list here. There are more things than this. These are just a few things I thought were important, and so you're trying to get all of this done in the paper at once, and that may be hard, especially with characters. So that's what usually sketching is all about, because you have all these things you need to put into your drawing, but instead of putting them all at once, you try to make a selection. You pick some of these things that are more important than the others. So instead of drawing everything and then adding colors, taking a look at how the cloth folds, looking at the anatomy perfectly, like adding those muscles and everything, you should probably just try to get your character on the page in the right position, doing the right thing. And I think that if you do get that down and you do put it like that on the page, it's going to be much easier for you to later on come back to it and adding the details, adding the drapery, adding the light, and it's going to be much more characteristic to your character. But I will not go into much detail about these 4 topics here. I think I will do a more detailed video on this later. This is just a little startup video, if you will. I think this is gonna help you. So gesture is basically the way the character moves. So if your character is jumping, the gesture is gonna be something like this. He's moving up, and then the other leg may have a different gesture, and the arms, the head is going to be looking up. And so the gesture is really how the character moves, how each part of the drawing connects to another. So there are a lot of gestures in the character, like how the torso turns and everything, and this gesture is really what makes your character look alive. And then you have this shoe, which together I like to call structure. Let me write this down here. Structure. And the structure is basically how your character is positioned in space and the proportions of the character. So structure would be simply how your character is. So say your character is a box. It's like this in space, and you set its position in space. Say the perspective lines are coming this way and this way, and it's just sitting and you're seeing it from above. And then you maybe want to add some more details, like, hey, it's not a box, it's a chest. But the principle is the same. You're trying to position your character in space in a way that it looks right. So okay, so this would be your box. doesn't have to be nice. And last one is the silhouette, and the silhouette is a little trickier than the others because it's much subtle. It's not as important, but it's something you should consider because the silhouette is really the first read you get of your image. So if your character is like here, she's looking forwards and she's pointing a gun right at the camera. Say the gun's here, and she's pointing the gun at the camera. This may look nice, but when you think of the silhouette, her silhouette is gonna be like this. Of course, this is really crappy, but here is what you're gonna see of the character at first glance. Then you go like, oh, there's a gun here, because our brain likes to differentiate things by how their silhouettes are like. But if you do instead of straight at the camera, she's more like this, and her arm is coming forwards with the gun, and she's holding it like this, just looking this way. When you look at the silhouette, the action is much clearer. You can see what she's doing now, and this is gonna reach better in your drawing. Again, this is not as crucial as the others. If you mess it up, it's not as damaging, but if you can do it, why not do it is the question. So with this stuff, let me get it out of the way. I'm gonna do a little demonstration, but before I get into that, there is another thing you should probably know. I don't know if you do know this already, but with structure, everything comes down to really cross contour, which is the ability to put things and say that they are moving away from you or moving closer to you. And so you sort of set the position of it in space and the way it's tilted just by using cross contour. Right now we have two lines, and these lines don't really say anything until I draw in the cross contour. And once I do that, you can clearly see it's a cylinder. So the cross contour is just these lines that are doing a cross contour around the drawing, and so they help to show perspective. They help to show what's going where. And you may notice, instead of just drawing the line right away, I'm going around the form. I only drew the two lines, but I'm already thinking as a cylinder, and so I am moving my pencil around it just as I would if I was circling this form. This helps you think of it as a 3D form, but not only that, the angle is going to be right, because if I did something like this, it's not going to be as good as doing it this way. And again, why would you make it harder on yourself? You already have enough trouble as it is. Drawing is really hard, so it's probably best if you stick with things that make your drawing easier. Like, instead of drawing your entire drawing on the sketch, it's better to probably focus on a few things at first, get those right, and once they're right, you don't have to worry about them anymore. So those things I picked here, the gesture, proportion, and all that, it really just brings you down to the bigger problems your drawing may have, because if the proportions are wrong, it doesn't matter how good the face or the eye you drew, you're gonna have to rework a major piece of your art, and it's gonna just throw everything off. And if the position in space is wrong, maybe her arm is actually going through her body, and that's not gonna work. It will require you to change the pose, which means you're going to change a lot of parts on the drawing itself, and that makes it super hard for you to change, and it's going to take you a while if you do mess it up. Same thing with gesture. If you don't do the gesture right, your drawing is going to look stiff, it's going to look lifeless, and that's not good. And the silhouette, I added it in because since we are working with major problems and the major forms, the silhouette is basically the first impression and it requires the entire body. And again, it's just one part of how you express your character. So let's get started with this. I'm going to do a little character doodle here. Let's say we have a girl. She's kind of looking a little bit away from the camera, just slightly. So this cross is drawn here, usually on circles, so you can tell which way the circle is facing, which is this way. Everyone does this, and I don't know if everyone knows what this is supposed to mean, but this is what it's supposed to mean. And so the circle is pointing this way, and let's say she's doing this with her body. This is a gesture line, just a way for me to guide myself. And her chin is here, and then the neck. If you notice, I'm not drawing fast at all. In fact, when you're sketching, it's better if you do not draw fast. It's something you have to think about every line. It's something, if you do it fast, then you're undermining yourself. You're gonna make mistakes, and then mistakes are gonna cost you time, which makes it seem that when you do the sketch right, it looks fast, but in fact you're drawing it really slow, deliberate. Every line you put down on the page counts, and this is something you see a lot of pros. They do sketch really fast, but that's because they know exactly what they're going to be sketching. And for beginners and intermediate artists, it's not so simple, and so it's better to take your time to measure out everything and to make sure everything works, so you don't have to worry about it again. So here I'm just defining a plane change. So here's the size, and the character's body is gonna be moving a little bit away from us, and here's where cross contour starts to shine. So if I do a cross contour like this, you see her body doing this now. And let's make the let's give one to the chest as well. So her body is doing this sort of motion, and it's moving backwards. And here I'm gonna add the hips. This may be a little too big, but it's fine. This is just a demonstration. So here, hips, and now you can clearly see how her body is moving backwards in space, and that is because we are taking our time to decide how the character is positioned rather than adding in details. So her leg now is gonna come forwards, and so it's gonna connect somewhere around here. I'm not concerned about the exact anatomy of the leg just yet. It's important to think of everything as simple shapes at first, because remember, we are doing a drawing and we're trying to solve big problems, and if you put in more forms, they become more problems you have to think of, and so that ends up making everything harder. So because those forms, say you have the leg, if you think of the leg as a cylinder, and then it's just one form you have to worry about. But if you think of it, say you have the leg here, and then you think of the muscle that's kind of the buttocks, and then you have like this tendon that comes from here, and then there is this muscle that goes all the way around here, and then here, and it all connects to the knee, and the knee goes down. You see, this suddenly becomes much of a problem, because say you want to change the leg, you have to change all these parts that you created on top of it as well, and that's gonna boggle you down. So hey, let's make things easier. Let's just draw one form, and this one form is gonna be what you are gonna use to change your pose. So here, this cylinder is actually on top of this one. They are connected, and I'm not really bothering with anything like that. It's just like one cylinder just sticking out to another, and this one is for the lower leg, and let's not draw anything else. I think it's fine here. So this one is coming forwards towards us, and this one is going slightly back. So, and this is what I was talking about, gesture. The body is doing this, and then the body is doing this, and then it's doing this. The body usually has this curves compensating for one another because you're trying to maintain balance. So if you push your leg all the way forwards, your weight is gonna be on that leg a lot, and that's gonna make you fall off balance. So the way you counter that is to pushing your weight to the other way, so it kind of compensates for it at least a little. And since she is putting her weight on this leg, this one is gonna move up. And these are all things I'm considering as a draw, because they are important in the way you think of your character. And so here is the other leg. This other leg is gonna be much straighter. It's going straight down, and it's gonna be just moving like this. And so her shoulder, let's just make her shoulder go up. Let's counterbalance again. Her hips are doing this way, let's do this way. And here we're gonna create almost like a fold. And so her arm goes, let's just make her arm dangle, it's fine. So she's moving like this. Her other arm is trying to balance out things. So she's like moving this way. This is not a very realistic pose in the sense you wouldn't see someone doing this. But again, this is not what matters, because oftentimes the drawings you're gonna do are to come with a reference, and this is the basis to drawing. Oh, sorry, I pressed the wrong button here. This is the base of drawing things without the model. Having a model is very useful for a lot of things, and I do recommend, until you get a good sense, or rather a great sense of everything the body has and everything you have to take in mind while drawing, you should stick with the reference. It's easy to forget about it and say, hey, I don't need the reference anymore, I can draw. But if you are drawing with the reference, you are learning. You are looking at something that exists and looks right. Regardless of how you draw it, that one is the right version. That one is the realistic version, and that's how things are supposed to be. You may do like really skinny waists like this one, or you may do like longer necks, but in the end they're still based on the real neck and the real waist. And if you don't know how to draw the actual thing, how are you gonna do a different version, a customized version of it? It just doesn't add up. And so it's better if you understand what is real, what is realistic, and then you break up for your style. And so here, I think I'm done with this little part here. So now that I got all those concepts I talked about in place, what I'm gonna do is make it blue. I made it by mistake last time, and this, what I really did was just make the layer color blue. You can do this on Clip Studio, but you don't really have to. I just like to make it blue, it looks nice. And I lowered the opacity to around 40% and put it on multiply, so if I had something underneath it, it wouldn't look strange. This is just a way for me to quickly get this layer I was working on as a sketch layer, and now I can work on top of it. So now I have those 4 concepts down, and I can start to go into detail. Now I don't have to worry about so much on certain things, and I can focus on more detailed parts. So here is the plane of the face, and here are the eye sockets. A lot of people don't think of them, but I think thinking of where the eye sockets are really helps you draw. So this character is, we're seeing her face from underneath. If you notice this line here, this is a cross contour, and a cross contour doing this means you are underneath the form. So with this cross contour over here, I know we are underneath her, so this line should actually be more like this, and this line as well. And so here, the nose, you're gonna see a lot of the bottom of the nose because we're underneath her. There, like this. And the lips, they are gonna be arching this way because they follow the form. Everything follows the form. So because we have that thing first, it makes it easier for us to now, we don't have to think of how the character is in space. We already know how it is. So we just add the details following those guidelines we set up earlier. And this kind of information, this kind of setup is valuable for you because it saves time. You may think sketching is a waste of time, but not sketching is a waste of time because the time you spend sketching is time it's gonna be you're gonna save up later. Here we're seeing her eyes from underneath, so you see more of this arc and less of this. Let's make her look down. This is gonna be a little weird. It's okay. No, let's put her eyebrows in a neutral position. I think her face is too big on this side. Let's just shrink it down. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. And this stage, since this stage as well is just another sketch on top of the sketch. But this time you are taking the 4 principles you already put into the drawing and you are adding a few more. So now what I'm doing is adding the smaller shapes. I'm adding the smaller details that go into the drawing. So here, now that I changed the head, this neck looks really long. So what I'm gonna do is I'll just take these 2 layers and drag them down a little bit. So now I'm correcting smaller scale problems rather than big scale problems. Let me take a look at this. Yeah, she looks really strange. Let's take a look at these eyes. They are not quite right at all. I think I didn't follow the line right. The line should be like this. So here's one corner of the eye, here's the other. Let's just make her eyes more like this, more simple. Make her look this way. Yeah, that looks better. So here I'm purposefully drawing this character very squarish, just so you can understand what I'm thinking of. I usually skip a lot of these parts, like shading the areas that are on the side. This is just for visualization. If you're having trouble, go ahead and do it, but you don't have to do it for everything. This is just to make you understand what you drew better. And if you think you need it, go ahead and shade it. After all, this is a sketch, and the point of the sketch is to make yourself understand what you drew. It's a drawing you're doing for yourself, so you can think of how the character is positioned. So here her breasts are gonna be like this. Actually, let's bunch them up a little bit together because she's gonna be wearing a shirt, so make them go like this. And now here is where you start to think of how the character is moving and what the character is wearing. She has a shirt on, and here this shoulder is a little too big. Let's just make it like this. So this character is doing like a super Frankenstein-like pose because she is moving all of her body in different ways. This is just to show how the gesture can affect the character. Again, this is not a pose you'd probably ever see in someone's art. We like to stick with simpler poses usually, but that's okay. So long as you get everything right, even a strange pose like this can work. Here are the pecs, which go under this, and here is the back muscle, the other ones. And you don't have to know this. It helps to know them, but you can also observe a model and copy it from them until you understand and know these muscles better. And again, I really recommend you start off, if you're starting to draw and this is one of your first videos, I recommend you to start with realistic stuff, rather than doing manga or whatever. In fact, you should do both. You wanna do manga, go ahead. But also, when you're practicing, draw realistic. Realistic drawing is gonna help you draw manga because you're gonna understand how the body moves, and then you are able to simplify it. And my own style is very simplified in a lot of things. I don't quite draw as many details as I did now. I'm trying to do more of a generic body type and a generic style without really pushing my own imprint on it. So this way this can apply to anyone or regardless of what they draw. So here is the leg here. So now if you look at this, well, she's looking a little off balance, but I guess that's what this pose is doing to her. This shoulder is moving up, this arm is doing this weird thing, and and then once you have this done, you would merge this two layers down and do the same thing again, and then you add more details on top of it, and that's gonna help you refine your drawing by steps instead of trying to cramping everything at once, which, especially if you're a beginner, is gonna make it much harder. So I'm gonna do a few little doodles here on one of my characters, and so you can see what I'm talking about. I'm not gonna draw the entire body, but this is just a demonstration on how this thing can be applied. So again, I'm focusing on the very generic parts of the body, the neck, the shoulders, and everything. I usually mix up anatomy on top of this because I studied a lot of anatomy, but if you are not familiar with anatomy, I recommend you not to think of anatomy at all while you are doing your first sketch. Then on the later stages you can add in the anatomy on top of it. It just takes longer, but you would rather take a little bit longer at the beginning than, you know, mess up and have to start over. So she has one of these cat noses and she's like, oh. And let's just do it like this. There's some thing here. This is of course an anthropomorphic character. Here's you can do this and do this. So her eyes like this, like, oh no, this kind of emotion. And so doing this first thing, like this first sketch, for me is crucial to get the idea I am looking for in the paper. It doesn't need to be perfect in all of the details, but conveying this first emotion, this first idea of the drawing, for me is one of the most important parts of the drawing at all, because if you start it wrong, well, your drawing is going to end up wrong, because everything is built up on top of this first few things you put on the page. The first few lines you put on the page are usually the guidelines to every other line you're gonna use, and so this is just gonna help you get all the details you want in place. So like this, let's do another one. Let's do a girl looking straight up to the side, and that goes this. So the mouth is a little bit more like this, then there is the nose here. Same principles, I guess, but this time with a human character. Excuse me. So her mouth is gonna be doing this thing. You just put it down like this, and another one here. Here is again the eye socket, not the actual eye. The actual eye is gonna be much smaller. This is a really good tip I will give you if you want to draw expressions the way the eyebrows and the skin on the forehead work for expressions usually really helps to show it. So if you want to do a character that's wide-eyed, you just make this arches wider. If you want to make them frowning, you can do this. And for me, it makes it easier for you to convey the expression and also to build the face, because these two things are probably the most important landmarks on the face, because from them you can just get all of the other landmarks. But probably this is it for this video. I totally went for a lot longer than I thought I would, but I hope this really helped you, and if it did, please like this video and subscribe if you want to see more stuff from me. This is my very first video on this, but I do intend to make more tutorials and things like this. So, and also, since I'm just starting out, if this video helped you and you think it could help a friend as well, send it to them. My objective is really to help as many people as I can, so if you know someone who can benefit from this video, send it to them. This is gonna help me, it's gonna help you, and it's gonna help your friend. So that's it for today. Thanks everyone, and goodbye.